What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Cryptid Saturday, and in today's Cryptid Saturday, we're going to jump into the wiki for Scotland's most famous cryptid, the Loch Ness Monster. The Loch Ness Monster, known fictionally as Nessie, is a mythical creature in Scottish folklore that is said to inhabit Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. It is often described as large, long-necked, and with one or more humps protruding from the water. Popular interest and belief in the creature has varied since it was brought to the worldwide attention in 1933. Evidence of existence is anecdotal, with a number of disputed photographs and sonar readings. The scientific community explains alleged sightings of the Loch Ness Monster as hoaxes, wishful thinking, and misidentification of mundane objects. The pseudoscience and subculture of cryptozoology has placed particular emphasis on this creature, which shouldn't really surprise anybody. She's kind of one of the few you can really latch onto because she is so famous. Origin of the name. In August 1933, the Courier published the account of George Spicer's alleged sighting. Public interest skyrocketed, and countless letters were sent detailing different sightings. The letters described a monster fish, sea serpent, or even a dragon. Ultimately, the final name settled on was the Loch Ness Monster. Since the 1940s, the creature has been affectionately called Nessie. Now we get to get into the sightings, which this is probably the longest wiki we're going down, guys, so just be prepared. St. Columba 565. The earliest report of a monster in the vicinity of Loch Ness appears in the Life of St. Columba by Adomnan, written in the 7th century AD. According to Adomnan, and I'm butchering that name, guys, I am sorry. Writing about a century after the events described, Irish monk St. Columba was staying in the land of the Picts with his companions when he encountered local residents burying a man by the River Ness. They explained that the man was swimming in the river when he was attacked by a water beast that mauled him and dragged him underwater. Despite their attempts to rescue him by boat, Columba sent a follower, Luigwin Moko Min, to swim across the river. The beast approached him, but Columba made the sign of the cross and said, "Go no further, don't touch the man, go back at once." The creature stopped as if it had been pulled back with ropes and fled, and Columba's men and the Picts gave thanks for what they perceived as a miracle. Believers in the monster point to this story set in the River Ness rather than the loch itself as evidence for the creature's existence as early as the 6th century. Skeptics question the narrative's reliability, noting that water beast stories were extremely common in medieval hagiographies, and Adamant's tale probably recycles a common motif attached to a local landmark. According to skeptics, Adamant's story may be independent of the modern Loch Ness Monster legend and became attached to it by proximity and believers seeking to bolster their claims. Ronald Binns considered that this is the most serious of various alleged early sightings of the monster, but all other claimed sightings before 1933 are dubious and do not prove a monster's tradition before that date. Christopher Carney uses a specific historic and cultural analysis of Adomnan to separate Adamant's story about St. Columba from the modern myth of Loch Ness Monster, but finds an earlier and culturally significant use of Celtic water beast folklore along the way. In doing so, he also discredits any strong connection between Kelpies or water horses and the modern media-augmented creation of the Loch Ness Monster. He also concludes that the story of St. Columba may have been impacted by earlier Irish myths about the Coronach and Oliphaeus. So needless to say, I don't think a monk walked out, showed a monster the symbol of a cross, and the monster just stopped from killing a person he told to swim across the river. That's just not how animals work. If anything, if it was a real creature actually swimming toward the guy, him yelling at it probably is what scared it off in the first place. But also, there's no like large animals that live in the water in Scotland, at least not that I'm aware of. So if anything, it might have been a seal that made it up the River Ness somehow. There have been seals seen in the loch, and if the seal happened to decide to attack the guy for whatever reason, that could have been it. But realistically, we'll never know, and more than likely, like they said, this is just something that's been attached to the Loch Ness Monster myths just to kind of like bolster it a little bit. So hey, it's been around since this time, but we don't have any evidence of it being the actual monster that everybody thinks they're seeing today. D. Mackenzie, 1871 or possibly 1872. In October 1871, D. Mackenzie of Balnain reportedly saw an object resembling a log or an upturned boat wriggling and churning up the water, moving slowly at first before disappearing at faster speed. The account was not published until 1934, when Mackenzie sent his story in a letter to Rupert Gold shortly after popular interest in the monster increased. Okay, to save time, I don't think I'm gonna have to do this between every one of these because there's a lot, but that was clearly just a log, so instead of flipping back and forth, probably just going to stay on the smaller screen for now. So then we get a bit of a gap here because the next one is from 1888 with Alexander MacDonald. In 1888, Mason Alexander MacDonald of Abrakian sighted a large stubby-legged animal surfacing from the loch and propelling itself within 50 yards of the shore where MacDonald stood. MacDonald reported this sighting to Loch Ness water bailiff Alex Campbell and described the creature as looking like a salamander. And outside of the salamander thing, I still think that could have been a seal. I mean, or possibly an eel, maybe, because he didn't say it had legs or anything. It just said it propelled itself, so it could have. I guess you'd have to look up that particular story to know for sure. Again, after that, there's a bit of a gap here. It says Aldi Mackey, 1933. The best known article that first attracted a great deal of attention about a creature was published on 2 May 1933 in the Inverness Courier about a large beast or whale-like fish. The article by Alex Campbell, water bailiff or Loch Ness and part-time journalist, discussed a sighting by Aldi Mackay of an enormous creature with the body of a whale rolling in the water in the loch while she and her husband John were driving on the A82 on 15 April 1933. The word monster was reportedly applied for the first time in Campbell's article, although some reports claim that it was coined by editor Evan Barron. The Courier in 2017 published excerpts from the Campbell's article, which had been titled Strange Spectacle in Loch Ness. The creature disported itself rolling and plunging for fully a minute. Its body resembled that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron. Soon, however, it disappeared in a boiling mass of foam. Both onlookers confessed that there was something uncanny about the whole thing, for they realized that here was no ordinary denizen of the depths, because apart from its enormous size, the beast, in taking a final plunge, sent out waves that were big enough to have been caused by a passing steamer. According to a 2013 article, McKay said that she yelled, "Stop the beast," when viewing the spectacle in the late 1980s. A naturalist interviewed Aldi Mackay, and she admitted to knowing that there had been an oral tradition of a beast in the loch well before her claiming sighting. Alex Campbell's 1933 article also stated that Loch Ness has for generations been credited with being the home of a fearsome-looking monster. And combining folklore with something real isn't that uncommon in any of these stories, really, of the cryptids that I go over. I believe I watched something on television at some point that said this couple actually just got done watching the original King Kong, and there was actually a circus nearby that had elephants, and they could have been bathing the elephants in the loch. So that's kind of like a fun little thing. That's probably why they saw the water churning up, because the elephants like to roll around. George Spicer, 1933. Modern interest in the monster was sparked by a sighting on 22 July 1933, when George Spicer and his wife saw a most extraordinary form of animal cross the road in front of their car. They described the creature as having a large body about 4 feet high and 25 feet long, and a long, wavy, narrow neck, slightly thicker than an elephant's trunk, and as long as 10 to 12 foot width of the road. They saw no limbs. It lurched across the road towards the loch 20 yards away, leaving a trail of broken undergrowth in its wake. Spicer described it as the nearest approach to a dragon or prehistoric animal that I have ever seen in my life, and as having a long neck which moved up and down in the manner of a scenic railway. It had an animal in its mouth and had a body that was fairly big with a high back. But if there were any feet, they must have been of the webbed kind. As for a tail, I cannot say, as it moved so rapidly, and when we got to the spot, it had probably disappeared to the loch. Though he was the first to describe the creature as a plesiosaur-like dinosaur, evidence suggested by researchers at Columbia University in 2003 proved his story to be fake. The university and Daniel Loxton suggested that Spicer's sighting was fictionalized and inspired by a long-necked dinosaur that rises out of a lake in King Kong. Okay, so this is actually the King Kong story. A film that was extremely popular in cinemas in his home city of London during August 1933, when Spicer reported the sighting. Loxton and Donald Prothero later cited King Kong as evidently an influence on the Loch Ness Monster myth. On August 4th, 1933, the Courier published a report of Spencer's sighting. The sighting triggered a massive amount of public interest and an uptick in alleged sightings, leading to the solidification of the actual name Loch Ness Monster. It has been claimed that sightings for the monster increased after a road was built along the loch in early 1933, bringing workers and tourists to the formerly isolated area. However, Binns has described this as the myth of the Lonely Loch, as it was far from isolated before then. Due to the construction of the Caledonian Canal in the 1930s, the existing road by the side of the loch was given a serious upgrade. So that one was false. Hugh Gray, 1933. Hugh Gray, 1933. Hugh Gray's photograph taken near Foyers on 12 November 1933 was the first photograph alleged to depict the monster. It was slightly blurred, and it had been noted that if one looks closely, the head of the dog can be seen. Gray had taken his Labrador for a walk that day, and it is suspected that the photograph depicts the dog fetching a stick from the log. Others have suggested that the photograph depicts an otter or a swan. The original negatives were lost. However, in 1963, Maurice Burton came into possession of 2 lantern slides containing positives from the original negative, and when projected onto a screen, they revealed an otter rolling at the surface in this characteristic fashion. That's just fun. When you can just find history that's a literal piece of treasure that kind of disproved this guy, but also just kind of adds this whole other level to this story. I really like it when stuff like that happens. Arthur Grant, 1934. On 5 January 1934, a motorcyclist, Arthur Grant, claimed to have nearly hit the creature while approaching Aberchan near the northeastern end of the loch. At about 1 a.m. on a moonlight night, according to Grant, it had a small head attached to a long neck. The creature saw him and crossed the road back to the loch. Grant, a veterinary student, described it as a cross between a seal and a plesiosaur. He said he dismounted and followed it to the loch, but saw only ripples. Grant produced a sketch of the creature that was examined by zoologist Maurice Burton, who stated it was consistent with the appearance and behavior of an otter. Regarding the long size of the creature reported by Grant, it had been suggested that this was a faulty observation due to the poor light conditions. Paleontologist Darren Nash has suggested that Grant may have seen either an otter or a seal and exaggerated his sighting over time. Which actually is kind of like a fun little deal. Like human memory isn't really all that good, and we like to exaggerate things. I mean, I'm sure you've embellished a story over too many years. You kind of lose track of what the story was to begin with. Also, we don't have good night vision, so something that's this big could end up being this big because we see its shadow and we can't distinct where the body stopped and the shadow stopped. So I don't know, it's just kind of fun though. Little food for thought on some of these on land sightings. I have kind of a theory that I might go into to the end, but we'll see. Now for the really famous one. The Surgeon's Photograph, 1934. The Surgeon's Photograph is perhaps the most famous alleged photo of the creature and the first to portray its head and neck. It is attributed to Robert Kenneth Wilson, a London gynecologist, on April 20th, 1934. Multiple British newspapers reported Wilson's claim to have seen the monster while driving near Loch Ness the day before, but the stories do not mention the existence of a photograph. Dr. Wilson described the monster as having a small head and a swan-like neck protruding 3 feet above the surface of the water, the Western Morning News reported. The following day, April 21st, the Daily Mail announced it has purchased exclusive rights to the photo to attribute it to Mr. Robert Kenneth Wilson. So the following day, April 21st, the Daily Mail announced it has purchased exclusive rights to a photo it attributed to Mr. Robert Kenneth Wilson. MA.MBC.CHB Cab FRCS of Queen Anne Street, W. I'm guessing that's west. Sorry, that was a lot and it confused me for a minute. Who has been touring the Loch Ness countryside. Along with the photo, it ran an interview with Wilson about his remarkable luck in being able to secure such a photograph. Wilson said he was looking at the loch when he saw the monster, grabbed his camera, and snapped 4 photos. Only 2 exposures came out clearly. The first reportedly shows a small head and back. The second shows a similar head in a diving position. The first photo became well known, and the second attributed little publicity because of its blurriness. I didn't even know there were 2 photographs. That's kind of fun. For 60 years, the photo was considered evidence of the monster's existence, although skeptics dismissed it as driftwood, an elephant, an otter, or a bird. The photo's scale was controversial, as is often shown cropped, making the creature seem large and the ripple-like waves, while the uncropped shot shows the other end of the loch and the monster in the center. The ripples in the photo were found to fit the size and pattern of small ripples rather than large waves photographed up close. Analysis of the original image fostered further doubt. In 1993, the makers of the Discovery Communications documentary Loch Ness Discovered analyzed the uncropped image and found a white object visible in every version of the photo, implying that it was on the negative. It was believed to be the cause of the ripples, as if the object was being towed, although the possibility of a blemish of the negative could not be ruled out. An analysis of the full photograph indicated that the object was small, about 60 to 90 centimeters, 2 to 3 feet long. Since 1994, most agree that the photo was an elaborate hoax. It has been described as a fake in the 7 December 1975 Sunday Telegraph article that fell into obscurity. Details of how the photo was taken were published in the 1999 book Nessie, the Surgeon's Photograph Exposed, which contains a facsimile of the 1975 Sunday Telegraph article. The creature was reportedly a toy submarine built by Christian Spurlong, the son-in-law of actor, screenwriter, director, producer, and perhaps most saliently, big game hunter M.A. Wetherell. Sperling admitted the photograph was a hoax in January of 1991. Wetherell had been publicly ridiculed by his employer, the Daily Mail, after he found Nessie's footprints. That turned out to be a hoax. To get revenge on the Mail, Wetherell perpetrated his hoax with co-conspirators Spurlong, sculpture specialist Ian Colin Marmaduke Wetherell, his son, himself a future actor, who brought the medal for the fake, and Maurice Chambers, an insurance agent. The toy submarine was bought from F.W. Woolworth, and its head and neck were made from wood putty. After testing it in a local pond, the group went to Loch Ness, where Ian Marmaduke Wetherell took the photos near the Alsa Tea House. When they heard a water bailiff approaching, Wetherell sank the model with his foot, and it is presumably still somewhere in the loch. So that's kind of fun. We might actually one day find the model, which probably not possible by now, but how fun would it be if somebody actually did find it? Chambers gave the photographic plates to Wilson, a friend who enjoyed a good practical joke. Wilson brought the plates to Ogstons, an Inverness chemist, and gave them to George Morrison for development. He sold the first photo to the Daily Mail, who then announced that the monster had been photographed. Little is known of the second photo, as it is often ignored by researchers, who believe its quality too poor and its differences from the first photograph too great to warrant analysis. It shows a head similar to the first photo, with a more turbulent wave pattern and possibly taken at a different time and location in the loch. Some believe it to be an earlier crude attempt at a hoax, and others, including Roy Mackle and Maurice Burton, consider it a picture of a diving bird or otter that Wilson mistook for the monster. According to Morrison, when the plates were developed, Wilson was uninterested in the second photo. He allowed Morrison to keep the negatives, and the photo was rediscovered years later. When asked about the second photo by the Nessie Information Service newsletter, Spurling was vague, though it might have been a piece of wood that they were trying out as a monster, but was not sure. So we don't even know what the second photo is. It could have been their first attempt at trying to do the hoax. That's kind of fun. But I didn't even know there was a second picture, so that's what makes this really cool for me. The Taylor Film, 1938. On 29 May 1938, South African tourist G.E. Taylor filmed something in the loch for 3 minutes on 16mm color film. The film was obtained by Popular Science, written by Maurice Burton, who did not show it to other researchers. A single frame was published in his 1961 book, The Elusive Monster. His analysis concluded it was a floating object and not an animal. William Fraser, also in 1938, on 15 August 1938, William Fraser, Chief Constable of Inverness Shire, wrote a letter that the monster existed beyond doubt and expressed concern about a hunting party that had arrived with a custom-made harpoon gun. Determined to catch the monster, dead or alive, he believed his power to protect the monster from the hunters was very doubtful. The letter was released by the National Archives of Scotland on April 27, 2010. So people were actually showing up to hunt this thing. That's crazy. We don't even know it existed, and humans' first instinct is to go kill it. Sonar readings. 1954. In December 1954, sonar readings were taken by the fishing boat Rival III. Its crew noted a large object keeping pace with the vessel at a depth of 146 meters or 479 feet. It was detected for 800 meters before contact was lost and regained. Previous sonar attempts were inconclusive or negative. So something big followed their boat for 2,600 feet, so a good ways, at 479 feet down in the loch. But they don't know what it was, because it was sonar. So that makes sense, just evidence of something big in the lake. Peter McNabb, 1955. Peter McNabb at Urquhart Castle on 29 July 1955 took a photograph that depicted two long black humps in the water. The photograph was not made public until it appeared in Constance White's 1957 book on the subject. On 23 October 1958, it was published by the Weekly Scotsman. Author Ronald Binns wrote that the phenomenon which McNabb photographed could easily be a wave resulting from three troughs traveling closely together up the loch. Other researchers consider the photograph a hoax. Roy Meckel requested to use the photograph in 1976 book. He received the negative from McCabe, but discovered it differed from the photograph that appeared in White's book. The tree at the bottom left in White's was missing from the negative. It is suspected that the photograph was doctored by rephotographing a print. So they faked. The Dinsdale film in 1960. Aeronautical engineer Tim Dinsdale filmed what he believed to be a dark hump that left a wake crossing Loch Ness on 23 April 1960. Dinsdale, who reportedly had the sighting on his final day of the search, described it as mahogany red with a blotch on its back. When viewing through binoculars, he said that when he mounted his camera to the object, it began to move, and he shot 40 feet of film. According to the Joint Reconnaissance Intelligence Center, who published a 1966 report analyzing the film, the object was probably inanimate. After the film, Dinsdale continued to pursue finding the Loch Ness monster, but while he claimed to have had additional sightings, he was unable to produce more photographic evidence. In 1963, Discovery Communications produced a documentary, Loch Ness Discovered. With a digital enhancement of the Dinsdale film, a person who enhanced the film noticed a shadow in the negative that was not obvious in the developed film. By enhancing and overlaying frames, he found what appeared to be the rear body of a creature underwater. Before I saw the film, I thought the Loch Ness monster was a load of rubbish. Having done this enhancement, I'm not so sure. However, additional analysis of the Dinsdale film have indicated that his sighting was a case of mistaken identity, and that he likely filmed a boat under poor lighting conditions. Although Dinsdale attempted to rule this out by organizing a fishing boat to sail a similar route later that morning, the comparisons was filmed under different lighting conditions, and while a white boat, Jarek's estimates of the size and speed of the object are now believed to be overestimates due to miscalculations of the angle and the camera and cuts in the film. And overlaying multiple frames seems to show a pale blob towards the rear end of the object, which appears in multiple frames and matches with the position of the helmsman of a boat as demonstrated in Dinsdale's boat comparison. It has also been noted that the object in his film does not actually submerge as often perceived, but blends into the gray reflections on the water. Additionally, Dick Rayner has noted that Dinsdale's binoculars were actually a wider field of view than his telephoto camera. Additionally, critics consider the dark shape noticed by the Discovery documentation analysis unlikely to be the shadow or a body underwater due to the low angle of view, and it is more likely to be reflections of the shore beyond the object. Although most researchers do not believe Dinsdale to be a hoaxer, his susceptibility to confirm bias and trusting dubious sources as evidence has been criticized. You know what's great about this? They're just debunking a bunch of this stuff for me. Like, they have better answers for all of this than I ever could have given you, so I hope you're enjoying the ride. Loch Ness Muppet. On 21 May 1977, Anthony Doc Shills, camping next to the Urquhart Castle, took what were alleged to be the clearest pictures of the monster then available. Shills, a magician, claimed to have summoned the animal out of the water. He later describes it as an elephant squid, claiming the long neck shown in the photograph is the squid's trunk and that a white spot on the base of the neck is its eye. Due to the lack of ripples and translucent look, it has been declared a hoax by many people and received its name because of its staged look. So, that is just a magician doing a magic trick, and it got famous. That's fun. Holmes video in 2007. On 26 May 2007, 55-year-old laboratory technician Gordon Holmes videotaped what he said was this jet black thing about 14 meters, 46 feet long, moving fairly fast in the water. Loch Ness Monster Watchers described it as among the best footage ever seen. BBC Scotland broadcast the video on 29 May 2007. STV News North Tonight aired it on May 28, 2007, and interviewed Holmes. Adrian Shine, a marine biologist at the Loch Ness 2000 Center in Drumnachut, suggests that the footage was of an otter, seal, or a water bird. So they don't actually know that one, but that's what it could be. Sonar Image 2011. This is one of the more famous ones. On 24 August 2011, Loch Ness boat captain Marcus Axelson photographed a sonar image of a 1.5 meter wide, 4.9 feet, unidentified object that seemed to follow his boat for 2 minutes at a depth of 23 meters. And ruled out the possibility of a small fish or seal. That's 75 feet, by the way. In April 2012, a scientist from the National Oceanography Center said that the images is a bloom of algae or zooplankton. So the zooplankton and algae just kind of stayed in one place, and since he was moving, it just kind of seemed like it was following him, probably being drugged, some of it, by the current that his boat was creating. If that's even possible or how that could work, that's just a good idea, an idea that I have about it. The George Edward photograph, 2011. On August 3rd, 2012, oh, that's fun. Those were even wrong. Don't you just love wikis? So on August 3rd, 2012, skipper George Edwards claimed that he took a photo. So on 3 August 2012, skipper George Edwards claimed that a photo he took on 2 November 2011 shows Nessie. Edwards claims to have searched for the monster for 26 years and reportedly spent 60 hours per week on the loch aboard his boat. Nessie Hunter IV taking tourists for rides. Edwards said, "In my opinion, it probably looks kind of like a manatee, but not a mammal. When people see 3 humps, they probably are just seeing 3 separate monsters." Other researchers have questioned the photograph's authenticity, and Loch Ness researcher Steve Fletman suggests that the object in the water is a fiberglass hump used in National Geographic's Channel documentary in which Edwards had participated. Researchers Dick Rayner has questioned Edwards' claim of discovering a deeper bottom of Loch Ness, which Rayner calls Edwards Deep. He found inconsistencies between Edwards' claims for the location and conditions of the photograph and the actual location and weather conditions that day. According to Rayner, Edwards told him he had faked a photograph in 1986 that he claimed was genuine in the National Geographic documentary. Although Edwards admitted in October 2013 that his 2011 photograph was a hoax, he insisted that the 1986 photograph was genuine. So this guy can't even get his own story straight. A survey of the literature about other supposed sightings include photographs published in the Scientific American blog network on 10 July 2013 indicates none of them are actual sightings. Dave Elder video. On August 27th, 2013, tourist David Elder presented a 5-minute video of a mysterious wave in the loch. According to Elder, the wave was produced by a 4.5 meter, 15-foot solid black object just under the surface of the water. Elder, 50, from East Kilbride, South Lancashire, was taking a picture of a swan at the Fort Augustus Pier on the southwestern end of the loch when he captured the movement. He said the water was very still at the time and there were no ripples coming off the wave and no other activity on the water. Skeptics suggest that the wave may have been caused by wind gusts. So wind made water move. Could have been a monster, could have been the wind. No real evidence to go one way or the other on that one. Probably just an animal, but we'll never know. Apple Maps photographs. This is all the way up to 2014. On 19 April 2014, it was reported that a satellite image on Apple's maps showed what appeared to be a large creature, thought by some to be the Loch Ness Monster, just below the surface of the loch. At the loch's far north, the image appeared about 30 meters, 98 feet long. Possible explanations were the wake of a boat with the boat itself lost in image stitching or low contrast, seal caused ripples, or floating wood. So it's a satellite image that has several possibilities. Or it caught the Loch Ness Monster. Can't disprove it, can't prove it, so that one's kind of up in the air. But finally we have the drone footage from 2021, 4 years ago, guys. In September 2021, God, I wish it was. So today's, as of recording this video, it is currently September 19th. It would have been so great if this was also September 19th. But in September of 2021, it was reported that a 20-foot, 6.1 meter creature was captured on a live stream near the loch. Though it was quickly described as a digitally altered video by skeptics due to the lack of natural movement, an unlikely degree of illumination, and its resemblance to a stock image of a toy plesiosaur. So more than likely it was a toy, or a very bad hoax. But it's the Loch Ness Monster, so it made it into the thing. I'm sorry guys, it's kind of interesting to me how we've had all of these sightings going back for so long, and all of them actually have real explanations when it comes to the Loch Ness Monster. Now, could there be something out there? I truly believe that, but at the end of the day, we don't have any evidence that science hasn't managed to actually disprove with a few videos, right? And there's all kinds of things in that loch, all the things from seals, there's sharks, there's all kinds of fish, there's eels that could have gotten really big. There's so many different things that these could be, and when you're in the water, you just never know. But it's definitely not a plesiosaur. Those things have to come up to breathe for air. Way more people would see them. I don't care how big the loch is. If you have enough for a breeding population, unless there was just one left and it's currently dead, then maybe, but that's the only thing giving credence to it. But also the Loch Ness was not there when plesiosaurs were around. So the one getting trapped in the lake just doesn't make sense. But I'm going to call it here for this particular video. And I'm doing that because there's still a lot more to cover. So we're going to do a part 2 of this on the next Cryptid Saturday, where I'm going to go through all of these searches. So that was all the stories and all the sightings that was on the wiki. In the next episode, I'm going to go through all the searches for the Loch Ness Monster on the wiki, and that'll be us just kind of closing this up. Unless there's more down there, I think I can get a third video out of it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think the Loch Ness Monster is real? If so, why? If you're ever watching from Scotland, have you seen the Loch Ness Monster? I would love to hear that story too. So leave that down in the comments down below. But until then, next time guys, I will see you next Saturday for Cryptid Saturday. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell.